Welcome to another episode of the Melbourne Athletic Development Podcast, Lateral Think. This episode of Lateral Think is also sponsored by Melbourne Athletic Development. We do this podcast to have interesting conversations with interesting people. We want to get better because we want to improve the outcomes that we get with the clients that we work with. If you have questions or need help with your performance or injury management, contact the team at Melbourne Athletic Development. Today we are super lucky to have with us Hugh Van Cuylenburg. Hugh, I'm not going to butcher your introduction. You can tell our listeners, one, why you're here, and two, what you do.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and the reason is... No, I don't know why you're laughing. That's true.
You're the one fan,
Well, I'll tell you why I am, because... Well, first of all, the content's great, but also, for every 100 books on running... there's like one sprinting book.
Yeah.
They're all like middle distance or endurance. And for every 100 podcasts on running, there's one, well, there's this sprinting podcast basically. There's such a bias towards like middle distance and...
I think it's because it's more accessible for people. Like, and I always have that conversation with people.
As in middle distance running is more accessible.
Yes. Like most people know they can put their shoes on, tie them up,
Yeah.
walk out the door and start running, right? And there is a good way for them to visualize their progression. It's like, I was running 5 minute 30 Ks and then I got down to 5:20 and it's become really popular for that kind of concept.
Yeah.
However, sprinting, although people appreciate like, that's really cool and I like that, it's not quite as easily accessible. Like you got to go to a track.
Yeah.
You kind of run like a goofball when you start, so you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, true.
You time yourself and you're like, oh wait, I'm real slow.
Yeah.
I tore my hamstring while I was trying to time myself.
Well, do you think distance running too is a bit more forgiving? Because if you just keep doing volume, you're naturally going to keep getting better. Whereas sprinting, you can have a lot of obstacles along the way to getting better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But my feeling is that sprinting is so much better for you.
Well, it is. In terms of like the actual, and Jack's probably much more of an expert on this than I am, but if you actually look at the health benefits that you get from something like sprinting, you get a lot of that nice crossover for the metabolic health that you would get from cardio sprint, especially if you do sessions that, and for people who don't know, Hugh's actually a 400 meter runner. So you actually get some of that aerobic conditioning that you would get from doing more of that like ongoing type sort of endurance running. But you get the development of power, you get the development of like speed, and you get the ability to develop aspects that are really important for longevity, particularly physical longevity. So, we've talked about in one of the early podcasts about power, and people go, oh, well, that's for young people. And it's like, bullshit, that's not for young people at all.
Yeah.
Power is so highly associated with falls risk. So if your power level is low, which is obviously your ability to create force quickly.
Oh, there you go. That's a
right?
perfect,
And that's sprinting. It's running fast is creating forces quickly. If you can't do that, you can't correct, an imbalance when you say stumble, and then you go down. And you go down when you're older. The highest risk is something like a hip fracture, and the statistic is crazy. It's something like within 12 months, 50% of people who have a hip fracture are either unable to ambulate or dead.
Right. Okay.
So it's like you don't want to break your hip when you're older because
Yeah.
the risk of you having bad health outcomes is enormous.
Yeah.
I think the other issue too is how much endurance type activity you do. Because the issue you have when you're just doing purely endurance is you're going to lose muscle mass over time. And if you look at a big prognostic indicator for developing chronic disease or even mortality, it's muscle mass and muscle strength. And then this is probably more relevant for your more elite athletes or for ones who do high volumes. It can actually start to create some dysfunction of your mitochondria that contributes to things like metabolic dysfunction, which is a big driver to a lot of chronic disease.
Yeah, for me, I just know that I tried sort of middle distance running 10 years ago. I just did it like, I was running I was probably training for like 3 or 5 Ks and it was fine. I got fitter, but I also I was injured all the time because just the volume I had to do through the joints and everything. And I got a little bit fitter, but now doing sprinting, I'm injured way less and I'm definitely the fittest I've ever been as far as like...
Well, I'm biased and I hope you are too. I always say the only reason people do long distance is because they can't sprint.
Okay, well, this is taking my content here. This is, because I know we were talking about me being a 400 metre runner, but like the reason I'm a 400 metre runner...
Because you'd prefer to do 100, but you can't anymore.
I wish I could do 100s. That's what I feel like. Everyone wants to be a 100-meter sprinter.
No one, we had this conversation, and we had this conversation with a few distance coaches, and we always laugh, right? Because no one really wants to run, the marathon. Like no one goes at school like, oh, I'm going to race you around the school 412 times. Yeah. Let's see who wins that race. No one does that. They go, I'll race you to that pole over there, and if I win, you're buying me a chocolate bar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a race to who's the quickest. That was the thing when I was at school in primary school. I remember we had a local school shut down. They all came to our school. It was day one. It was like, who's the fastest? Yeah, that was totally. It. And I was so nervous the whole day. I was like, this is happening at lunchtime. Yeah. It's on. And it was a sprint across the oval. You're right. It wasn't a cross country. It wasn't like, who is the best cross country runner in this year level? It was who's the quickest sprinter. Yeah. And that's all that mattered. That's all that mattered.
It's also a cultural thing too, because I think if you say to someone, I've ran a marathon, even if it's, relatively slow, people go, that's amazing. But if you said to someone, I've run 10.5 for 100 metres, most people look at you going,
is that good?
Okay.
Yeah. They don't know. And then it makes it hard because obviously the level of performance to do that compared to say someone who runs like a 4-hour marathon is so much harder.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously it requires a certain level of ability, but also there's probably a lot of training that's going behind that.
Totally.
But people wouldn't understand it at all.
And I guess on that, just to come back to your original question.
Who you are.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'll get to who I'm in a second.
We might end up in this situation many a time.
Yeah, it's very possible.
We go down some tangents, sorry.
No, I'm okay with that. That's my life as a big, so I get it. The other reason I'm here is I'm a huge fan of your squad. I was the other day, I was driving home. It was a beautiful day. I was like, I'd love to run, but it's a recovery day, so I shouldn't. And I saw you guys training. I was like, I'm just going to do it. And I literally stopped, and then I got there and I was like, no, I can't. This is not. So I literally just watched. I watched your training session. That's what I watched the session. Your athletes are unbelievable. And I actually learnt a lot. Like being a teacher, I know different learning styles. Observational learning is a big one for me. I actually watched, in particular, Michael Romnan. I was watching him the other day, and you were doing, I mean, I don't know much about technique, but I look at him and just think that is just beautiful when I watch him run. And I was watching him do 150s, and I was like, I don't know if this will make sense, but I don't put my feet back down quick enough. That's what I was thinking watching him. I was like, puts his feet down real quick. He gets them up and down really quick. And that sounds ridiculous.
Well, it's funny because even this morning I was going back and forth with him because we're really not happy with some of the technical things that he's doing. Yeah. Like last week he ran in Canberra and he got some things really right, which we're really happy, which is progress from where we think he can go. But he got some things, really he didn't quite nail. And, we've been going back and forth all week, like trying to play with some different race model stuff and some technical positions because he doesn't quite, and his profile is one where he's a bit of a hybrid. He's not, and that's why he's good at the 200 more so than the 100. He's good at the 100, but he has a bit of a slower gait pattern than we would actually like, and so his time on the ground, his contacts is, I would say, on the slower end.
Yeah, right. But I picked up. I mean, compared to me, it looked fast. So I was like, but I know copy that.
So it's interesting. So it's something that we work on a lot. And what you're talking about, like getting your foot back, is we call that like the angular velocity of the thigh, and it's like how quickly you can get that back into the ground. Because
amazingly, that makes sense to me. Just what you said there.
Yeah,
angular velocity of that makes sense. Just driving it back into the ground quickly.
Yep.
All your athletes, I love watching them, and I literally I could happily sit and watch one of your training sessions, and that to me would be a great morning. Honestly, they're awesome, and such good people as well, which is important.
Well, I don't know about some of them.
Maybe I haven't met them yet. All the ones I've met seem pretty good. Pretty good to me.
So,
sorry.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about your story with athletics. I don't want to get too deep, and I'm sure people can listen to some other podcasts where you've spoken about it. And then a little bit.
Bad luck. I haven't talked about it, and I'm about to unload.
Go.
No, this is always. I'll do so many podcasts, and then I'm always like, I wish they'd asked me about running. That's what I want to talk. That's what I'm passionate about. I will do it quickly because it's quite boring. But my background with athletics is, I did it at school. I think I first fell in love with athletics when I would have been 10, and it was the school. I did a 200 and won the district, which means you got through the zone. And I was like, I won't even. And I won the zone. I was like, oh my gosh! And which meant you got to go to the state final. And then my dad said, we better get. I was running in these probably Dunlop volleys. The other one in Dunlop volleys I was running, and Dad goes, we'll get you spikes. And Dad was really close to Bill Hooker. And so he contacted Bill.
Actually spoke to Bill not that long ago.
Oh, really?
This is going to sound like the biggest wank, but at the Olympic dinner that they held a month or so ago, and I was talking to Bill because we were telling him how some of the people down at Collingwood are about to break his records and stuff.
Oh, really?
Actually, Sam, who you know, her partner, Connor, I think is very close to breaking Bill's 400-metre hurdles record for the club.
Oh, really?
And I was letting him know. And he's like,
how do you take
bloody
it?
About time. It's from the 70s.
Really? Gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
He's held that for a long time. Yeah, well, so Dad called him and said, Hugh needs spikes, what do we do? And he said, there's an opportunity, like an op shop, like there's this like bucket full of... And so Stephen came down as well. Steve would have been 8. And the two of us went down there together and we got our first ever pair of spikes.
That's
out
cool.
of these. They didn't fit. Like, they were just the only spikes that were in there. And that's when I first experienced it. Did all the athletics all the way through school, but cricket was really big for me. And then in year 12... So doing APS athletics, it was like... It felt like quite a big deal. Looking back, I don't know if it was, but it felt like a really big deal.
It's so funny. In the last few years, I've gotten involved again, and I just realised...
With who? Where are you doing?
With a number of different schools, both on the physio side and also with some coaching. And you realise, like, they build it up to be something that... It's bigger than Ben Hur, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is kids' athletics.
Yeah, exactly.
You go down, like some of the Saturday mornings I go down there, and I was just like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah,
what am I doing here? It's like trying to...
They pay quite well, I think.
It's trying to herd cats into doing... the 200s on, kids are, nah, Dad said I gotta go get new shoes.
yeah, exactly. The perfect excuse. Yeah, so we did school athletics and I was okay at school. Like, never, I just did it because I loved it so much. And then in year 12, I had a scholarship for cricket at the VIS, and our winter program, they just did sprinting with us. I had this, the fitness guy then was like, nah, it's more.
Do you remember who it was?
Yes, his name was Brett Snelson. Okay. Was his name. I think he's now works in wine. I think he did.
Interesting.
Yeah, but he wasn't.
What year would this have been?
1998.
Okay, yeah,
98. So probably a long way before.
It's but just a close mate of mine has been involved with the Victorian cricket program for a long time.
Right.
Who actually was a sprinter.
Right.
Adrian Mott. I don't know if he won the Stall Gift in 2006.
Oh, there you go. Gosh.
And then was in the extended relay squad for Australia in 2007, 2008.
Amazing. And he's with cricket now.
Yeah, his background in strength and conditioning, and he's been with the Bush Rangers and the Melbourne Stars and sort of
there you go.
Australia A team for a long time. Yeah.
Awesome.
It obviously would have been well after yourself, I've actually got a little bit of insight into the cricket programs there.
Yeah,
he was sort of. I was very fortunate because he was very nice to me and let me go in and observe and do some stuff with them.
Oh, great!
Not that I did anything; I was just sort of watching, but that was really helpful in the early part of my sort of strength and conditioning stuff to sort of see what some of the elite cricketers were doing. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, well, we did back in '98. He came along with this thing called unit running. It was the strangest program, but we would jog for like 15 minutes and then do like 8 40-metre sprints flat out, and then we'd jog for 10 minutes. Oh, well, that was called one unit. And then you jog for like 15 minutes, then you'd do 6 80s or something up a hill, and it was all around like the tan area.
Yeah, the MCG and all that stuff, yeah.
And then you'd get up to 8 units. So we did that 3 times a week for the whole winter when I was 18. And then it came to the APS athletics, and all the other schools had scholarship boys who were really quick. And I was always in the care. We didn't have any good sprinters, so we'd just sit back and go. We used to literally do paper, scissors, rock to see who had to go in the A race, and no one wanted to do it because you get absolutely smashed. And on first round of APS athletics down at Geelong, and it was...
Yeah, it's always Geelong.
It's Geelong.
It's always pissing rain.
Yeah, why am I going there when only 2 APS schools are there? But anyway, we did paper, scissors, rock, and I lost, so I had to go in the A race. I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. And all the scholarship boys there, and I won it, and I ran it was a 10-7-8. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's like, I'm so confused. I was like, that's something's... I literally was like, no, that didn't happen. Did it again the next week. It was a 10-8, I think it was. And I was like, wow, this is... And I loved it. And then school finished and I just chose cricket. No, like there was no...
Who did you end up playing cricket for?
Well, Paran and then Melbourne University.
Yep.
And played there till I was 35, 36. But I had a lot of cricket clubs saying, come and play cricket here, but no one said, do you want to come and do athletics here? Which I don't... But if you're running 10-8, there's probably no one saying, we need this guy at our club. I don't know, but...
Yeah, as you know, the athletic system is a little bit broken. So
Yeah,
there's not a lot of, very intelligent recruiting. And even, as you know, like finding a decent coach or squad can actually be difficult.
Yeah, totally.
Where it's in something like cricket or footy or whatever, people are like, oh, there's a good player, let's get them down.
Yeah.
And people are,
They look after them and they like...
It's one of the weird things that I always think with athletics. If Athletics Victoria or even Athletics Australia at a high level actually just even spoke to people a little bit and said, oh, you're doing pretty well. Like, I'm not even going to do anything. Just like kind of encourage them a little bit. They're like, oh, they spoke to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
But they don't do that. They don't even do that.
Just a phone call.
It's quite weird.
Yeah, it is. I mean, again, not that it's like 10-8 was extremely elite, but I was so skinny, there's nothing of me. Maybe someone just to say, because I would have said, I'm going to play cricket, but they would, in my head I was like, well, I can't do both. But the way it is, you probably can. Like
probably could do a reasonable amount. Yeah,
there are races that are not on Saturdays.
Yeah,
but I just didn't know. No one spoke to me, so
and it probably would help. It would have helped cricket quite a bit.
Oh, massively. But I played cricket till I was 35, and then I had retired and did a year of nothing, and I was so flat. And every Saturday playing cricket at Melbourne Uni, if I was down at Fine Leg, I'd look over the fence and just see the athletes training, and I'd always go, fuck, I'd love to do that again.
Yeah.
But every year I got older and older, I was like, well, I can't, I'm too old. And then pretty flat about doing nothing when I was 35, 36, and said to my wife, when I was 37, I think I'm going to do athletics. And she goes, what?
Say you're nuts.
Yeah, she goes, what are you thinking? And I said, I used to do 1s and 2s, but I'd had a hamstring tendon come off the bone playing cricket, so I was like, I don't feel like going through that again, so I'm not going to do 1s. But I might try a 400. I said to my wife, we live down in Mount Elijah. I said, there's a terrible grass track at I think it's Mornington Secondary College or Mount Eliza Secondary College. It's awful, long grass, like it's like corrugated.
You've got a nice track down there now.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I trained there the other day, and I said to my wife, "Can you time me over 400? I just want to see what I get." And she goes, "What are you hoping for?" And I said, "I can't remember doing a 400 when I was at school, but I used to run like 10-8, so probably like 53." And she goes, okay, cool. And I'm in like running shoes, long shorts, like a long sleeve t-shirt. And I did it in 1 minute and 9 seconds. And I said, no, that's not true. And she goes, yeah, 1 minute and 9. And I went, I'm never doing this ever again. And I had 2 days of like, I was so flat about it. And then went, no. Do you know what? That's probably, and I was weighing 84 kilograms. And I was like, no, this is why I probably have to do this. I think I have to do this. At least I'll just do 1 season and then join Melbourne Uni, just got played cricket there forever. And then, I just became, after my first session, I was so addicted to it. I just, I didn't have a coach for 2 years. My sessions were like, I didn't know what I was doing. I'd do like 5 700s or 5, like
random stuff.
I just chose, I'd go down and go, today I'm going to do 4 800s, like not understand. And I did no research either. I was just like, but I think it kind of didn't matter because I was 84 kilograms and like
you just needed to shed some.
I just I needed to drop some weight and then I started and then through meeting Katrina through our podcast got onto Fort and Fort said come and join us and he sorted me out and I started to realise how far off the mark I was with the sessions I was doing.
Well, I think that kind of tracks into some of the stuff. I sent you obviously some questions before the podcast and you sort of spoken about like why you came back, but what have you actually learned through this process of coming back? Has it been interesting for you? You obviously had a reasonably high level of sporting background playing cricket. Has the sport of track itself actually been a different process for you?
Yep, it's been really illuminating in so many areas. The first thing I learned is how fast elite runners are, like how quick they actually are, because you hear so much rubbish when you're watching footy, like, oh, he could have been
there's just no chance.
Yeah, they say footballs and go, look how fast he is, he could have been an Olympic sprinter or whatever. No, he definitely couldn't have. He's like, yes, he's quick in a football field, but like it's a different
it's completely different level, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a different...
Well, they make all these estimations of, this person's max speed is this, so if they ran that for 100 metres, they could run this time.
Yeah.
Not taking into consideration
the acceleration.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's so that's the first thing I've noticed, that like these guys are like watching your squad and the different people I see training out at Lakeside with Katrina's group, so elite. Like it is, and it's almost, because my dad used to tell me that back when he was at school, he went to Melbourne High and they used to, Friday afternoons or Wednesday afternoons the whole school would walk down to Olympic Park and watch people like Ralph Dubell And he said there'd be thousands of people at Olympic Park.
Oh, wow.
And Dad would go. It was just the greatest thing. And I just makes me a bit sad that's still not a thing. It's like this hype around athletics of like people should be going to watch like Hannah run. Like it's insane.
I think it's interesting because you see it every time the Olympics comes around. There is an interest in it, and you know, obviously, it's a bit sad right at the moment, and we'll see what obviously comes of it. But you know, Pete's was actually the person that probably did inspire people a hell of a lot. You know, and at the moment, he's under investigation for EPO, so we'll see what comes out of that. But there was obviously that interest, and it's sad that they don't keep the momentum going throughout. The cool thing has been, and I'm a little bit skeptical, and I'll say, but like the running, and particularly distance running movement has really taken off. The one part of it I don't like is it seems like a very like in-group, out-group, very hipster kind of pursuit at the moment.
That's very true.
Which I don't really like because it seems if you wear the cool socks and hat and $400 shoes, you can get into the club, and if you don't run with us because
tattoos help as well.
Terrible tattoos seem to be the mark of the leader of a run club, I think. Stupid leg tattoos, it seems to be the thing.
Yeah, like cartoon type drawings all over your legs. I have noticed
cactus, you know. Like I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Apologies to all the people with a cactus on their leg.
No, but it's. I have noticed that is very true. There's a big, like it's such a cool thing. Like the more people do it, the better, definitely. But I take your point of like if someone looks at it and goes, I don't look like that, so I can't do that.
And I like that to me is not what it should be about. You know, I think running is accessible for a lot of people for various reasons, and it's probably better if you describe it. But like the benefit you get from it is enormous, and it shouldn't be like an in-group out-group thing.
Well, it's a great way to come to. So there's two more things I've learned through this process. So the second one is that I've learned through sprinting, specifically sprinting compared to middle distance or endurance running is, how do I summarise it? Protect your energy or sort of look after you. You got to look after yourself.
You've got to be smart.
Yeah,
in training. You can't train stupidly because you get found out really quickly.
Totally. And so if there is a niggle or if there's something not quite right, you don't go, I'll just harden up and run through this, and like you actually.
That does not work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work, and I would argue it doesn't work for a lot of things in life as well.
That's actually a really good point.
Because the amount of times I've burnt out doing what I do, and I'm just like, I sort of glorify a bit and just go, I was sick, but I turned up and did this talk anyway, or I was so unwell, but I flew here and did this, worked with this squad. And then I was with the, and I'll get to this a bit later with what I do with the relationship to elite sport, but did a lot of stuff with, I was with the Queensland State of Origin side last year, and I was with them for that whole campaign. And I was so exhausted by the time I got there with our kids not sleeping, how hard I was working, that I ended up getting this like thing in my eyelid. That I had to operate it on
like
while
a
I was
sty or something.
But I had to just proper like 4 needles into the eyelid.
Oh wow!
They flip your flip your eyelid inside out. 4 needles into your eye. It
was a crazy experience.
I just went in there to go, what's the story here? And the guy goes,
you're about to die.
He just goes, let's get that out right now, pretty much. I went, okay, cool. How are we doing this? We're just going to like brush it out? Or he goes, no, that'll be 4 needles into your eyelid, and then I'm going to have to get this like knife and I scrape out the entire inside of it. So,
oh wow!
But I had that from fatigue. Plus, I was sick, and then I got COVID. All in this, but I look back on it, and I was on empty. Like,
yeah.
But the irony was, at the same time with my sprinting, I'd learnt like it's all about being as healthy as happy as you can be. Is that you're going the healthier and happier you are, the faster you're going to run was my philosophy, and it took me a long time to apply it. I learnt that for sprinting, but I didn't quite learn it to life until way too long.
It's an interesting thing because it's like I was telling someone this the other day. I actually think the tasks that require not only like the diligence to do it, but the need to actually, one, be intelligent about the decisions you make, and are difficult not through perseverance, are actually way more challenging than the ones that are difficult through perseverance. And to explain that, like I was talking to a guy down at the track who I met. He's a lovely guy, and he's a personal trainer, big muscular bloke. I see him one day, he's down there, he's doing all these laps.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, you're like...
Is that what he said? Was that your...
Yeah. And he like laughed at me. And he goes, I'm going to run a marathon. I was like, mate, you're nearly 100 kilos. And like, and he's he's not fat, he's just well muscled. I was like, what are you doing? He goes, it's good for like to challenge myself mentally. I said, that's not fucking challenging. I was like, suffering is not a challenge. I was like, it's actually very easy to learn to suffer. We do it all the time. And this is that mentality of just like enduring and sludging your way through it.
Well, I think it's also associated with that, the badge of honor of being busy, you know, and always being labelled as busy. Because I think like the reality is distance running kind of fits in with that culture, because it's just like, I'm just going to go out and just run for long periods of time, because that's the personality I associate with.
Yeah. And I sort of said to him, I was like, find something that's difficult, not because you have to endure it. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, find something that, like, it's hard because you can't actually do it. Maybe it's a skill you can't get.
Yeah.
Like, maybe, like, it doesn't have to be physical. It could be something. I was like, those challenges, to me, are way more interesting and way more difficult than just being like, oh, if I keep pushing myself and keep grinding my way through this, eventually I can do it. I'm like, that's not impressive.
Totally.
It's like, in fact, that's fucking boring.
Yeah.
And I get myself into so much trouble, and I probably will even with this. But, like, I'm not impressed if you do a marathon. Honestly, I could do a marathon probably tomorrow. Yeah. Would it be slow? It'd be fucking slow, but I could do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because all I have to tell myself is like, don't stop, you piece of shit. Just keep going. Right? Just keep going. Right? It's not that hard.
Yeah.
What's hard is going, oh, I'm going to try and run a marathon in 2:30.
Yeah.
Right? Because that takes a lot of time, a lot of planning, a lot of smart decisions, a lot of work. Maybe I've got the talent. Maybe I don't.
Yeah.
There's lots in it. Or I'm going to pick up a new skill. Like, I'm not musical at all, and actually we were really lucky to have Jack's brother as a classically trained pianist.
Oh.
Right? And it was awesome talking to him. And I actually caught up with him even recently again to go through, because I think there's a lot of crossover with picking up musical skills and then picking up physical skills as well. There's similarities, and it's just interesting from a learning perspective.
Yeah, of course.
But I said to him, I'm not musical. But to me, like, eventually, hopefully one day I have the time to actually allocate. I'd really like to learn something like an instrument, right? Or even potentially, like, the one that I would like to learn is a piano, right? And I know I will be absolutely horrible at it, like horrible. Like, not even, like, it'd be terrible, and I'm completely tone deaf. Like, his brother was laughing at me because we were talking about it. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But to me, that's actually a challenge.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any maybe underlying capability to start with. And it's going to suck. I'm going to be terrible at it. That's hard.
Yeah.
It's not hard to just be like, put another foot in front of the other, another one. But it's been really glorified by, especially like with popular stuff more recently, people like David Goggins. Everyone's just like...
And Ned Brockman.
Yeah, just keep going. Just keep like... And it's not to say that what they do is not impressive. It is to a specific level. But I actually don't think it's that difficult either. I think you just get used to suffering.
But I don't think it's just not good for you, to come back to your point. That's not good for you.
Oh, it's not.
Like, you look at the way that kind of running, endurance running, I just feel like it's not good for you. But then if you look at sprinting and the way sprinters train, that's so much more applicable to life.
Well, I have an untested theory, but I think it's for two reasons. But I think it's an interesting observation that I've made is, if endurance running was really healthy for you, we would see a lot of endurance runners live for a really long time. But it doesn't actually seem to be the case.
Yeah.
I don't know why I look at stuff like this, but I weirdly have kind of like looked at distance runners who obviously they die, what age they pass away. They don't tend to live longer than people who have done other sports, or even in general just have longevity. Now, obviously there is genetic factors associated with longevity, and there's many other lifestyle factors. And I've got an idea of why. I'm not going to say it because I think it's not really my area of expertise. But like, I don't think that it's necessarily more healthy for you than doing something like sprinting. In fact, I think sprinting is more healthy.
Yeah.
Right? And if it was, it would extend your life. But it doesn't.
Well, totally. And
and so that's relative, I guess, too, because for your general everyday population, doing some aerobic activity would be useful, but there's a cut-off point.
Yeah.
Yeah. The third thing that I would say this has taught me, sprinting's taught me, is that
you're really good at staying on track, actually.
Yeah, much better than us.
It's my job. It's my job. So the third thing I've noticed, well, the thing I've learned from this is that with what I do, so many people come up and ask me, I'm going through this, my brother's, this has happened to him, or my sister's going through this, what can we do? I'm not a psychologist, so I don't like giving out advice, but the one thing I feel like saying to them is just go and get yourself a brand new pair of shoes and wear them out, and you come back to me in 6 months' time and you tell me how you're going, or you tell me how they're going. I just feel like running is the most incredibly therapeutic, healing, meditative exercise there is out there. And I know everyone's got their own activities that they go to, but to me, running is just, I mean, it got me through COVID. It got me through, we've had issues with a couple of our kids, or with one of our kids, and it's got me through everything that he's been through. Running is, but the truck is absolutely
It's interesting. I don't know whether, Jack, you might know more, but whether there has been some sort of research into particularly those more fundamental kind of movements, whether from an evolutionary perspective it does actually induce, say, different neurobiology compared to other exercise regimes.
Well, yeah. I think the other thing too is there's the element of, are you going from doing no physical activity to some physical activity, which has a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
But the other things I think of straight away too is that associated with spending more time outdoors, and you get to see more natural environments instead of seeing all the very rigid straight lines that we see all the time inside, as opposed to seeing the very complex and non-linear lineage we see within nature. And also too, whether that gives you an opportunity to have time to actually process your thoughts. I think the other thing that happens too is we spend all of our time indoors, we spend all of our time in front of technology. You don't give ourselves a space to actually just allow our minds to actually wander and process stuff.
Yeah, well, mind wandering is definitely a powerful result for me from running. My psychologist said to me that, she said the other thing it does, running, she said it jolts the brainstem in a way that can stop the transmission of anxiety. She said just like when we get anxious kids to go on a trampoline, it jolts. There's no other activity that jolts a brainstem like that. Which I never
it's causing brain damage.
Yeah,
I can't remember anything.
Yeah, okay.
What was I anxious about again?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, just forget. Yeah, but no. But just summarise it. That to me, it's running has got great healing powers. So yeah.
I think one of the things that's interesting about your process with it is obviously your background also involves teaching.
Yeah.
Which, do you think in any way that kind of process has led you to, because I know that a lot of the times you sort of do develop a bit of your own programming. I know you jump in with Fort and what he does, but do you think that that's actually helped you structure some of these things and make some of these more smart decisions?
It's made me be. I think teaching has this. It gives me this really analytical. Like I want data. Like I want to know. I'm actually getting better.
You want some objectivity about what's going on.
Absolutely. And so that, and then it helps me to establish some kind of goals that I'm not hell bent on, but it's just like a North Star. We'll sort of shoot for that. But yeah, whether it's with Fort or sometimes jumping in with Katrina and Kevin and whoever it is, it's trying to pick what sort of works best for me, because as a 42-year-old, my needs are very different to younger athletes. You know, I have to pay even closer attention to any niggle, I think, and I need to rest a lot more, I think. But that's what I've learned is that early on I just went hell for leather and just did all the sessions that Fort did a 2-month program for me, and I tried to stick to it and I just couldn't.
You can't.
Yeah, I was just exhausted, and it wasn't like they were outrageously hard sessions, but I need a day or maybe 2 days to recover.
All right, here's a question that I think crosses over from what you do in your day-to-day life, which I'm going to bastardize this to explain probably what you do, so correct me because I'll stuff it up. But
that's right, go for it.
Hugh works...
Maybe you can explain it.
No, well, obviously most people would know you because of the Resilience Project and the couple of books that you probably wrote more than a couple books.
No, just two, and it'll be only two as well, Never again.
The few books that maybe with ChatGPT you can write as many books as you like. Have you thought about that?
No,
there's an idea for you.
Yeah, there you go.
He's written a couple of books, particularly looking at mental health aspects and how we can use ideas around resilience, gratitude, and our past experiences to be able to create opportunities for ourselves to change the way we think and interact with the people around us and the world.
Beautiful.
And you've
very well summarised.
Yeah, very successfully turned it into quite a big organisation that works, with organisations such as schools, education platforms, sport at both, I think, probably at community level and as well as at very high level as well, to help people at an individual or a group level or team level to be able to actually use these strategies. I haven't done any of your courses. I've read some of your books, but a lot of people talk about how effective that is. One of the things that I think is interesting and is a crossover with sport and also the current world we live in is there's a lot of copying that goes on because of social media. How do you think this plays into what you're talking about with being smart and this incessant need that people have in today's world to actually use things like social media as a comparison? Because to me, I feel like that creates weird kind of psychology for athletes that maybe we don't necessarily see in the general populace. They say, and the dumb example I would give is, even now, like some of my athletes will send me something like, oh, such and such is doing this. And it's almost like it's created this anxiety in them of like, oh, I need to be doing that. And it's like, as you just mentioned, like I'm 42, I can't deal with what was written on the program, or I saw this other 42-year-old doing X, and they're running faster than me, so maybe I should copy what they're doing. How do you think that kind of all sort of mixes together?
I never even thought about it for elite athletes or elite sprinters, but it
happens all the time.
It has to be compare and despair. It's like
compare and despair. I like that.
Comparison is the death of joy.
Yeah. Well, totally. It's like it's. I mean, we see it all the time. With everyone's got their version of it, but I'll see on social media when someone's curating the absolute highlights of their life and putting them up online, and you're like, oh, my life, I'm not that happy. I'm not that successful. I'm not that rich. I'm not that funny. I'm whatever. You don't have that many friends, and I mean, now I even think about it. It happened to me with all that I know. It happened to me. There's a guy who I think he lives in Sydney. He's 43 and he runs a 400 in 49.9. And he did a session with Steve Solomon the other day, and he posted all about it. And it was 6 300s uphill. And I was like,
I can't do that.
But I did. I was like, I better do that. I had my program done for
set.
I was like, I had my program set. I was like, yep, I'll stick to this for summer holidays. We're down the beach. And I saw this session. I went, oh, well, I want to run under 50, so I'll have a go at that. And I went and did it. And I did. It was 6 300s uphill just with a walk recovery. I'm not exaggerating. The next 4 days, I was fucked.
Yeah.
Like for 4 days, walking up the stairs, 4 days later, my legs were aching. So I had 4 days of no training.
Just because one session.
Because I saw what some other guy did in Sydney, who's just a much quicker runner. Like he's got like. There's nothing.
So
as far as I can tell, all he does is like just run 400s, and so I just tried to copy. So it happens to me. I should have looked at it and gone, that's what he's doing. I've got my stuff over here, and I know what works. Why would I copy his stuff? Like it's ridiculous.
Because we know, like it happens to everyone in the general sense of their life. You know, as you said, people curate what they want you to see, and it's like, here's the nice car that I just bought, or this is me in a bikini looking fantastic, and blah blah blah. But it's not real. A lot of it, it's filters and bullshit, and they don't tell you that they got a huge mortgage or that car's financed or they've hired it. Like it's not real most of the time. Sometimes
and the same would apply to running. The same, absolutely. It's not real life.
I always think it's funny, and I won't out the people, but like a lot of my athletes obviously know lots of the top athletes because they compete against them, they're friends, they've known them for a long time, and you'll see on social media they're presenting this. And then you hear from them, oh yeah, no, they're in real trouble. Like they're broken. I like wet myself. I'm like, why are they posting this bullshit? Like, great session today. And then afterwards they're at home crying because they're in so much pain that it's like, what are you doing?
It's so true. I mean, even if you look at like my algorithm now has become so strongly skewed towards sprinting. Like if I type in search on Instagram, it's just all sprinters.
If you go to the explore page, it's just videos of running.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But then but I have to remember myself, that's not real. It's not real life. That could have been a session from 3 months ago. Yeah. And right now they're in bed like with a
broken leg or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but it's compare and despair. It's real across all areas of life, but it's my work to help people see that, but I still fall for it.
Well, based on and I know it's something that I posed to you. How do you see the skills that you try and pass on to other people, strategies, actually influencing yourself and like how you actually tackle sport? Yeah. But also how do you then maybe pass on some ideas to people of how they can use it in their pursuit of sport, whether it be at a local level or elite level?
I can give you examples from people I've worked with, which sort of.
You need to name drop now.
I'll try not to name drop. I'll team drop. I'll drop. No, in fact, I'll even give examples of people who I haven't worked with who do this stuff really well. So 3 things speak about a lot of gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. Gratitude, the ability to pay attention to what you got, not worry about what you don't have, and that comes back to what we were talking about before with social media. Yep. So, Carl Lewis once said he's got all these lectures online, and I got stuck listening to Carl Lewis lectures. But
Carl Lewis is actually very interesting because
it's fascinating.
He's so biased to his own experience,
and
it's very interesting because if you don't learn to actually say, Carl, that worked for you because you were the most talented athlete almost in history.
Yeah.
You get caught up thinking, oh, I should be doing what Carl says, right? But really, and this is, I don't know Carl Lewis, but I don't think that a lot of the things that he says would work for anyone other than Carl Lewis.
Yeah.
Such as?
Some of the technical things that he talks about works because Carl Lewis is 6'1", 6'2", has really nice lever lengths. His anthropometrics he's very fine in his setup. He was extremely powerful for someone who didn't do that much gym work. Elastically off the charts. The guy jumped over 8 meters 80 in the long jump more than anyone in history. He is the quintessential freak. He won Olympic gold in the 100, 200, 4x1. And the long jump across multiple occasions. He is one out of the box.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's not that what he's saying is wrong. It works, and it works for a lot of athletes, right? But take it with a grain of salt. Unless you fit some of those physical profile and characteristics, it's not necessarily going to work for you.
Yeah.
And I always found it funny, as a coach, you're always looking at different content, and you would have seen, obviously, people like FlowTrack did that series where they followed Houston.
Yeah.
Right? And some of the stuff that he says to the athletes is absolutely garbage. You're shut up, Carl, stop talking. You're actually fucking this athlete up.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing. That's I gotta stop listening to Carl.
Yeah. No, but some of the stuff is they're just gold. You're oh fuck, that's a really good point. And only someone with his level of background would be able to pass that information on because he's experienced it.
Yeah.
Right? And as a coach, unless you've run 9.8 and and jumped 8.80 or 8.90, you jumped 8.90 windy, I think it was, you can't tell people that because you don't know, you haven't experienced it. So he's got insights that people don't have. Yeah. Right? But sometimes he just doesn't shut up and he says things, I remember watching some of the sessions and he's saying things to athletes and you're just that's actually not a very good coaching instruction there. You're better just to say nothing there. Yeah.
There's one video where I swear he gives a guy an eating disorder on the spot.
That's what I mean, stuff like that.
He goes, he goes,
he gives him an eating disorder on the spot.
Yeah, just he goes,
here.
You having a boy or a girl? He goes, when are you expecting that? And this athlete's this Topo looks down and he goes, oh, and everyone laughs at him and he goes, have a look at it, sort it out. It's mate, that is terrible. You cannot say that. That's an awful thing to say. But anyway, now that we've dissed Carl, I'll tell you what he said that I thought was good. He said, on the topic of gratitude, he said, for a long time, my opponents made me very, very nervous and I'd have extreme nerves at the starting line until I realised I'm so grateful for them because they're the reason that I run so fast. Or they're one of the reasons I run so fast.
It's funny, it's funny you say that because I spend a lot of time, and I think that we've got there now, but I spend a lot of time in the development of my squad making sure that people understand the dynamics of how a group should work. And I've been very heavily criticised, even by my own athletes at times, and I've had to learn a hell of a lot about this, of being way too forthright with the behaviour within the group. And the reason that I'm like that is because I try and instill in them this, exactly what you said, of if you've got someone in the group who's at your level or better or has gone from being not as good as you to better than you, that is good for you.
Yeah, totally.
Right? You should be grateful that person is pushing you on, right? Not the other way around where you're jealous and you're getting competitive and doing stupid things and trying to be combative and hurt each other. And I feel like we've got there now because we're very, very supportive of what we do. And my messaging always to them is understand this process because at the start you might not be as good as the person that you're looking to knock off, but you might catch them and go beyond them. And that whole process will come back to you. And you should be grateful for how that works.
Yeah. But that's a perfect example. If they were to train by themselves, they wouldn't be as fast. It's as simple as that. And so how lucky are you that you've got these people who are just a little bit quicker than you that drive you to get better?
You have to be really strong on, in my mind at least, you have to be really strong on policing that. Like if someone starts getting jealous and, you know, complaining that someone beat them in reps or whatever, I pull them in. So like, pull your head in. Like, stop being a fucking baby.
Yeah.
Right? What are you going to do? Get upset because you got beaten?
Yeah.
Like, use it.
Yeah, you're so lucky to have this here.
Yeah.
You're so lucky. Yeah, that's I love that. The second thing we talk about is empathy, which is when you feel what someone else feels and put yourself in someone else's shoes. And the last example I can think of that was so good performance was Joel Selwood in the AFL Grand Final, just gone. His day was just doing things for other people. Like he walked out with Gary Ablett's son, took him through the banner before the game. After the game, he finds a Down syndrome water boy, brings him over the fence and lets him
taking him around. Yeah.
You're taking him around everywhere. And then in the medal celebration, he's giving his boots to the kid who presented him with the medal. He made his whole focus about other people on the most important day of his life. He's like, I'm going to do things for other people today. And it sort of, when you have a mindset of, you know, the Queensland State of Origin boys last year were massive on that. Like, let's just make everyone else's day really good and be interested, not interesting, like be about other people. It takes a lot of pressure off you. And I think a lot of people bring themselves undone. They get so insular and so focused on like whatever time they want to hit or whatever it is. It can just be a bit detrimental. It's a bit counter. I think the more you're thinking about other people, I mean, the neuroscience says you do things for other people, your brain releases oxytocin, makes you feel good.
You feel connected.
Yeah, you feel connected, the connecting hormone. I've always felt like the more connected you feel, the happier you feel. I think for most athletes, the more likely they're going to perform really well. And so that's really a big one. And then the mindfulness point of view, I think, I mean, it's so well documented in sport now. So many teams have adopted mindfulness for me, it's not, doesn't have to be sitting down with your hands in the air making weird noises and meditating.
I think it should be.
Okay, cool. We can. I look forward to seeing that at Collingwood.
That fits your description, John, perfectly.
I look forward to seeing that at Collingwood when I drive past next time. You guys see in a circle. I think any time. I think just the ability to just be wherever you are is just really important for life. But for an athlete, when something goes wrong, the ability to put it behind you very quickly and just get back to where you are. I mean, especially in a 100 or 200 metre race, like anything small goes wrong, you can't spend 3 seconds worrying about it. Like it has to be what's happening right now. Deal with what's happening right now. So
it's interesting, like, and we haven't spoken about it on the podcast yet, but I've been really getting heavily interested in the concept of flow. Obviously, the term was sort of popularised in the 70s by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Great name.
Yeah, it's a great name.
His first name is also in his surname.
Yeah.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
But I've been looking at a lot of like Stephen Kotler's work, and these concepts I find really interesting because to me, and this may be my interpretation, so if it's wrong, I'm happy for a listener to correct me, but it starts to get more into the biology of, actually, as you said, us using our, say, neurobiology in a way that's designed to be used rather than it being very much a conscious thing, which I think, I actually had this conversation with the VOS psychologist who works with some of my athletes. Like, she's an absolute legend. She's actually on maternity leave at the moment, but she was. I was grateful to her because she actually was like, "Oh, and I'm actually happy to have a chat with you, even though I'm on leave."
Yeah.
And I said to her, I was like, I actually struggle a little bit with this concept with coaching and the athletes because I feel like sometimes the psychological realm at the moment is all about strategies that are very conscious.
Yeah.
Right. It's like think this, believe this. CBT stuff is like change the way you view that. Blah blah blah. Whereas, like you mentioned before, with running, I feel like there's a bottom-up, almost subconscious way of hacking our biology to be like, no, you can actually think in a particular way because your biology is releasing, as you said, oxytocin or whatever, and it's more about behavioural things that do that.
Yeah.
I'm interested to kind of see where it goes. I'm sort of like looking more into it with a course that I'm about to start.
That's awesome.
Because to me, I think it's, as you said, like certain behaviours sometimes are even better than necessarily trying to kind of like jam in these sort of thought processes. Like, as you mentioned, behaving and doing things that are empathetic will actually bring those things to the surface more than being like, oh, I'm going to show empathy to someone. You're not thinking that. You're 100%. Actually going and, as you said, Selwood's grabbing the young guy and pulling him around to celebrate on the field with the rest of the people.
There's stuff like on I don't know, if it's on a race day, rather than getting so in your own head about your different cues you're trying to think of, it's just like checking how's anything I can do for you, or like, you know, like when's your race, or taking interest in someone else, or well done for what you did.
Yeah, it could be something. Yeah, like I know that sometimes it's always interesting if you see sometimes, and I used to think that this was a bad thing, but an athlete being like, oh, I was just watching what they like. Let's say their teammate, like they looked really good. I was like, and I've been saying to them like, go tell them that.
Yeah.
Like it's better coming from you than me, because from me they kind of expect feedback. But if someone goes over and says, oh, I really like that acceleration you did, or you looked really good in that, you know, in that stride, or whatever it was, it's like that is a huge, and I think it helped both of them.
Yeah,
you know, they both receive a really big benefit from that.
Compliments, like it's such an easy. We think nice things about people all the time. We don't often say it. I think compliments are a really easy way to hack like empathy, do like act of kindness. Huge.
I wanted to ask you, obviously your latest book that came out, when was it, last year, the year before?
When was it?
It was 2021?
Yeah, 2021, yeah.
It speaks a lot about shame.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to explain a little bit what that is?
Yeah.
Because I think that I struggle, because of shame, I struggle with shame. It's an uncomfortable topic for me.
It's an awful topic. It's
right?
So, yeah.
The question I had for you actually was, how does that actually potentially help athletic performance? And are there aspects that when you dive into this that maybe don't actually help with athletic performance? And have you thought about that?
Great question. Yeah, I have. It's such a good question. So shame, I'll get to the first bit. So shame is it's basically the feeling that you are not enough in some area of your life. And it happens from a young age. We somehow get these messages that we're not funny enough, we're not good looking enough, we're not whatever it is, and we're so ashamed of that we don't tell anyone, we keep it to ourselves, but deep down we have this feeling that we're not enough. One of the more famous sporting cases in the last few years would be Ash Barty working with mindset coach Ben Crowe. Her not enough story was that she felt like, and by the way, shame is not guilt. Guilt is feeling bad for something that you did.
Yeah.
Shame is like feeling bad for who you are, essentially, the way you are. He did a lot of work with her, and she had a lot of shame around the way that she looked, and shame pops up in under high pressure situations. So in Wimbledon a few years ago, this is well before she won. I can't remember who was against, but she was up. I think she was up 5 games to love in the second set, and had won the first set 6-2. And she lost 2 games, and it was 3 games in a row, and all of a sudden just imploded on centre court.
Yeah.
And then
I think I remember that,
Yeah, and then lost the 3rd set as well. And when Ben talked about what was happening with her, she started thinking about, her shame came up, like, I'm not good looking enough. How many people are watching me right now? I'm not a good looking person. All these people watching me right now. How many people are looking at what I look like right now? That's what sort of shame does to us. It's like this, we feel like it's what everyone's thinking about, everyone's talking about. No one gives a shit, no one's noticing it. But
everyone's got their own problems.
Yeah, totally. It's like when you see a photo, someone takes a photo of you in a group of people, it's almost like, what do you look for first? Like, what are you looking at first? Do I look, does my nose look big, or does whatever it is? Like,
it's actually funny you say that. I notice this a lot, that you'll take a photo and I'm a typical bloke. I can't take, the women always tell me, oh, that photo sucks. What are you doing? Yeah. You didn't do it from this angle, this height.
The sun's in the wrong place.
And I just take the photo and walk off, right? Yeah. But it's always funny because, I don't like that one. And I'd be like, you look really good in that photo. What are you talking about? No, it's my bad side. It's this. Yeah. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, totally.
Are there any stats that say that feelings like shame are becoming more prevalent in society?
I haven't seen any of that, but maybe no one's done the research on it. If anyone has, it would be Breno Brown, but it wouldn't surprise me if it is going through the roof.
The reason why I asked is sort of talking before about social media. Social media starts to create a lot more
comparison,
Yeah. Like I really question whether it creates more narcissistic tendencies, because it always 100%. Becomes about yourself. Yeah. It's like this idea of, you mentioned before, of creating your online persona, of you essentially being perfect in every form, as opposed to your real life persona, and how much that's actually associated with not showing gratitude or empathy and some of these other key emotions that you really that are really important for connection. Yeah,
totally. So that feeling of I'm not enough, it's always there, but and under high pressure situations, it can start to unravel us pretty quickly. So a lot of working out, being okay with your shame is just sort of like, the research says the best way to get rid of your shame is to share whatever your shame is with someone that you really trust. Doesn't have to be a psychologist. It's great if it is, but it could be someone that you know is going to, when you tell them.
It's funny you say this, like, one of the things, even recently, actually, people know that, like a coach, Hannah Basic, and she actually did a podcast with a friend of ours from overseas. Only the other day he released it. And she said, have you had to listen to it? And I went for a walk, I was listening to it. And I physically get uncomfortable with her because she's such an open book at times. Yeah. She's saying, this went wrong and that went wrong. And I'm like, I'm actually uncomfortable, right? Yeah. But I think it's one of the things that's so endearing about her is she's actually happy to share a lot of those things. And I think without maybe even recognizing it, she's gotten good at sharing it because, as you said, it actually takes the power away from that event or that feeling of, being not good enough or whatever it is, or, not being able to achieve something because of whether it's injury or decisions you've made or whatever. She just lets that power go by just blurting it out.
Totally.
Well, I think it's also a way to allow you to process it so you can move on.
Yeah, I mean, Brené Brown says that shame can't survive empathy. So when Hannah talks about something that's gone wrong and people message her and say, I hope you're okay, thinking of you, or then she gets empathy and the shame just sort of whittles away. And so that's why it's something to do with now. But to come to your question of, is it always a good thing for athletes? Yeah. To me, the timing of it has got to, that's a really big one.
Yeah.
So I was with Carlton Footy Club last year and we did a simple task. It was about probably 2 months out from round one. It was just write a letter to someone who you need to thank in your life. Someone who's a really powerful impact on your life. And it was me trying to get them to experience a little bit of vulnerability. And it turned out to be a bit of a harder task than I understood it was going to be. They were sort of a bit uncomfortable with it. It took a while to get to it. And by the time we were ready to actually do our letters, it was a couple of weeks out from round one. And head of strength and conditioning had said, and fair enough, I'm a bit uncomfortable with them going this really vulnerable place, for some of them a really dark place. We're 10 days out from round one. And I totally understood that. I get that, because I think the whole aim of this stuff is to have a healthy, happy athlete. And this stuff will get you there, but it can get harder before it gets easier, if that makes sense. Like it can, if all of a sudden you're talking about, I mean, for me, that activity wasn't that hard to thank someone, but a lot of them it was the first time they'd ever done something like this, and it might be their mum for something incredibly deep for them that happened. And to do that, it's going to unearth some other stuff and be quite a bit of stuff to work through. So the timing has to be right, I think. You don't want to...
It's just a funny one. Like, Jack always laughs at me, but I really, really enjoy reading philosophical writings.
Yeah.
And I tend to slant towards existentialism. I find it really interesting.
Yeah, right.
But then I get, like, terribly existential with everything, and I start going, well, this doesn't matter.
I remember sending you a link once to this YouTube video that was talking about the concept of optimistic nihilism, and I remember you saying, don't send me that stuff, please. I don't
No, the reason I say this, I have to limit, although I really enjoy the content and I enjoy, like it sounds wanky. It's like, it's wanky in the sense of, to me, it is that mental masturbation. I enjoy the difficulty of that content. Yeah. I can't read much of it, or I can't look into much of it, because I actually start going into a really, like, it's not a dark place, but it's a place where I think things don't matter.
Oh yeah.
And I start getting like...
That's not good for a coach.
Well, not think... Oh, when I say, like, from a moralistic standpoint.
Right, okay.
Like, I remember once, Jack and I sometimes have a bad habit of having very philosophical conversations and say, like, a rehab setting like this. I remember once, like, having a debate with a patient that I knew really well, and we're very friendly, about, like, how murder is not really that much of a moral jump. And they were like, you've lost your mind, right? And I probably had at that point, right? But it's
Don't send him in more stuff.
Yeah, because I've been reading so much of this stuff that I was like, well, like, morality is very relative, and like this, and like it got into a really weird place. So to me, I think it's important that as the timing of it is probably the biggest. It's probably where I was going with that question, because there's even things at the moment, for instance, where I'm dealing with a lot of people, with some of the VIS athletes I have that are in the VIS, and you're getting inputs from lots of people, and they all think they're helping. And for the most part, they are. But sometimes you're like, you cannot pass that information on to my athlete. You need to pass that on to me, right? Not because it's bad information, not because it's wrong, not because it's not helpful, but because they don't need that extra information in their head while they're preparing for a major event. Does it mean it's the wrong information? by no means are you in you're providing a really good professional service.
Yeah.
But that can't go into their mind because it's extra information they don't need right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's similar to this of like, if you don't get the timing of this right, and you brought up too much vulnerability to a time when it's like, that's not, like walking into the Olympic final being like, can you just tell me the three things that you're most grateful for and send a letter to this person? They're like, you're like, no, probably not.
I'm just going to run this race. I'll get back to it's quite important to me. Yeah, so timing's huge, that stuff. It's huge. So I think it's all great, just done at the right time.
All right, we probably have time for one more thing. And I think I always ask this to people that I think are interesting or they seem very curious people, which you are, which is what's something that you're exploring in your development and learning at the moment that might be related to this or might not be related to this, but you're actually really enjoying?
Two things I'm most obsessed with at the moment are sleep and food. And I've started...
In what order?
Good question.
Food's such a rabbit hole, that one.
I mean, I've been trying something for the last 100 days, which has been huge for me. But intellectually, it's probably not great for sprinting, but intermittent fasting. So I'm 16 and 8, and intellectually,
it's so valuable. Fasting is so valuable for.
I cannot believe how much better the energy. I feel like I've got this new brain energy, which is, I don't know if it's a weird thing to say.
Well, it's interesting. Like, I fast a lot, and I actually cannot do intellectual work in a non-fasted state.
Wow.
Or not, and I can.
Yeah,
but I don't like to.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm nowhere near as clear. Yeah. So typically, you said you're doing 16. I typically do 18.6.
Wow.
Right.
Are you doing that like every day, or is that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
There's probably at the moment there's probably only one day a week where I don't do that.
Oh my gosh, that's huge.
But yeah, and even some days I do less, like more than that. Weirdly, and it's a bit of I'm trying to work out the balance with it because obviously the guys are in athletics competition season. I've got to get the balance right. But like when they compete, I don't like eating. So I feel like I'm much clearer and much more observant. So for instance, we were in Canberra last week. I didn't eat until approximately 6:30. So I'd eaten the night before at, I don't know what it was. It would have been like, would have eaten at like
this
7
is
o'clock.
inspirational stuff to me.
I would have eaten at like 7 o'clock, and then I didn't eat I just had I drink black coffee and I have water. And it was really hot on the Saturday too, so I probably drank about 4 litres of water. Yeah. But I won't eat until the last race is done. And I feel like I'm way more clear and I'm way more observant and I can actually help them more. But I haven't got the balance right because for those races, days that go long, by the end, because it was so hot too, I was in all sorts. Yeah. Right? And I'm willing to do it because that's kind of, sometimes I feel like, the level of commitment you have to kind of get the message across for them. Yeah. But I haven't got that balance right yet.
Yeah. So I mean, I've even been training now on, if I train in the morning, I haven't eaten yet. And my times are, if anything, quicker. Yeah. So
I think it just the thing that, and again, we're not coming from a non-scientific kind of background on this, but I think that it's one of those things that you have to habituate to, and then once you have, you probably can get away with it. The problem is a lot of the studies, and I've spoken a lot with the VS dietitian, and even with Louise Burke, who's kind of probably the leading sort of sports nutritionist, about some of this stuff at a conference. And one of the conversations we had was pretty much, as humans, we can adapt to nearly anything. But if you don't give yourself enough time to do that, and that might be, some people, that might be a couple of years, you may not see the benefits, and therefore the research doesn't necessarily back it up. They go, we tried people fasting, and we did this for 3 months, and the results were better in the non-fasted state. But that might not be enough to actually know. Yeah.
I think I said the other thing I think too is it also depends on the population group, because now you're a little bit older and you're doing it much more for obviously setting yourself personal goals, but also for that fitness element. You're getting potentially a lot more benefits from fasting than, say, a younger person who has less stresses in their life.
True.
Let's say improving things like your mitochondrial function and therefore energy metabolism.
Totally.
That you might not get in a 20-year-old athlete who has very little stresses in their life outside of training.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I've loved it. I've loved the brain energy I have. Basically, that's my motivation. But then I haven't. I mean, I had a day where just to bring sleep in as well, but I did a session the other day. It was 300s. That was a session with like a 10-minute rest. Yeah. And I usually...
You progressed on from the 700s.
Yeah, I've trimmed down a bit now, yeah. And so, but my usual time for that is around 41. I'll do them at 41 seconds. And I'd had, for the first time, because I've got 3 young kids, we never get sleep. For the first, they were at their grandparents' house, and I had 8 hours sleep uninterrupted. And I hadn't eaten, and I went 39, 38, 39. And I was like,
you were like, what is going on?
And I was like, I was in a car going, what's just happened? What? I haven't eaten. And I went, oh, sleep. That's it. That's sleep. And so that was a point where I went and got an Oura ring straight away. I'm not wearing it this morning, but I got an Oura ring straight away, and I'm like, I want more data on my sleep. I need to work out what's going on. And so
it's such a big factor that if you don't, like at the moment, I'm about to finish another sort of short course that we have on the education platform that we're putting together for practitioners, and it's about like managing the elite athlete or even just the athletic population. And I put all this stuff about sleep in there, and the research is so conclusive.
Oh,
they're like if you're getting less than say 7 hours of consistent sleep, you should be getting more than 8. But if you're getting less than 7 on a consistent basis, performance nosedives really quickly. Injury risk goes right up. So it's really clear that if you're not getting that, you're in trouble.
Yeah. With 3 young kids, we got a 6-month-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And my average sleep for the whole of last year was 6 hours and 10 minutes. That was my average. Yeah. So I'm doing some nights running in 5.
Yeah.
And
that, as you said, it's probably clearly impacting what you're doing, but you understand that that's the process.
I do. It's just frustrating. I just wish I had this. I just wish I did. One of the big regrets is I didn't start doing sprinting when I stopped playing cricket when I was like 26.
Yeah, and had a crack at it.
And then
probably would have gone a lot, pretty far, I guess.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, but I just love, to come back to the whole conversation, it's like the love of running. Like I just love trying to run faster and the other people you meet through it. And I've said before, watching you guys train is just, it's awe-inspiring, like how quick your athletes are, and they're awesome to watch, but it makes me want to get better, and getting better makes me feel better, all that kind of stuff. So it's all works in. It's just a great, running's the best. Sprinting's the best, sorry.
On that, Hugh, can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your Sunday to come and join us. We know you're very busy. Thank you so much, and hopefully maybe we'll do this again at some stage.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's the amount of times I've done podcasts and just said, we should ask me about running. I'd love to talk about running here. This is so boring. Why are we talking about it? So, yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, mate.
Cheers, guys.